To deliver further insights, we have a distinguished panel of experts. Ms. Aisha Nurain Janah, Group Vice Chair, Hotels and Resorts Investment Maldives. Ms. Nurain is a chartered accountant with over a decade of experience in driving transformation across the corporate governance, construction, finance, ESG strategy, and philanthropy sectors. She is also the founder and director of Rehanli Consulting and serves on multiple industry and international boards. Ms. Shaahina Ali, Executive Director for Parley, Maldives. Ms. Shaahina is one of the pioneering female diving professionals in the country with over 35 years of experience in marine exploration, conservation, and sustainable tourism. She also played a key role in establishing the first dive center in Mali and has worked directly with communities and ecosystems to protect the oceans. Mr. Athif Shakoor, a true student of the Maldivian economy. Mr. Athif is the adjunct assistant professor at the Asia Pacific Blue Economy Research Center at Villa College, the strategic consultant at MIFCO, and serves as a consultant to selected foreign and local corporates. His work on the local economy spans over 2 decades. The panel will be moderated by Mr. Amjad Thaufeeg. And now, please welcome our panelists to the stage.
Once again, good morning. I hope you did enjoy a little bit about the numbers that I shown, although not in a positive way. We will try to just bring, to our 3 panelists today, they will be talking with different sides of the whole story that I just actually went through. So from my very first on my left is Nurain. I will start with Nurain. We'll go straight to the questions, and also after this, we are trying to just open for questions. If anyone has got any questions or suggestions, or even if you have a different opinion on a certain thing, please feel free, just raise your hand and then just say. The reason why I'm asking this is, the reason of this event is for us to have a constructive discussions and bring some solutions. It might not be always someone from the audience may have a better idea than all of us combined, and everyone is welcome. So I'll start with Nurain. A lot of hoteliers are saying we need to hit pause on growth, and that's exactly that I was also showing, and most of us actually in this audience believes as well, mostly because of the declining occupancies and room rates, but you are still actively developing and investing. Do you share the same concern, or do you see things differently? I would love to hear why you believe the development should not stop, and how things like better marketing, the new terminal, or even smarter, more sustainable ways of building can actually help fix the issue.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, and good morning to all of you. I do wear many hats, so I just want to be clear that I'm speaking here on behalf of my private sector hat with our family business as developers and hoteliers, and really, we're a business that my father started more than 40 years ago, so we're really invested in an enduring sustainable industry, so that's the perspective that I'll be sharing with you here. I think this is a really interesting topic, and I think what we have to really ground ourselves in, when we look at statistics like you just shared, it's very easy to be doom and gloom about it, but we do exist in a VUCA world. Most of you might have heard this, the volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So this is not that challenge is just for the Maldives or we're making mistakes. This is just the time that we're living through, and how do we actually be resilient for the future. So to answer the question, if we are to stop development, I think that will be, if I can use this analogy, an oil-producing country saying we're no longer going to produce oil because the prices are going down. It's not really a choice that we have. This is the natural resource, the main industry that we have, the engine of driver for our growth and employment, and really uplifting the living standards for our whole nation. So I don't think it is about stopping growth. I do think it's about differentiating growth. I think it's also really about understanding as a sector, when we develop, what are we developing? Also, it's also, when we look at development at Haram, we're really careful around the footprint footprint that we have, but we also really sit in a particular differentiated segment. Our segment is ultra-luxury properties that bring in the high return on investment. That's not to say that there isn't a place for other types of segments as well, but it's really being intentional, strategic, and having a holistic approach to that. You mentioned connectivity and the infrastructure developments we need. I think there's still a lot to do. We're really clustered in the central, Mala Atoll. We know we've done some analysis on the south and the north of the country that actually the number of beds that's needed to feed infrastructure projects, and then vice versa. So it's kind of a catch-22, but we really need that holistic connectivity so that guest experience is standardized for each segment as well.
Thank you, Nurain. Mr. Athif, Shakoor, I would ask about, you have warned on your blog that Maldives has been depleting its natural capital, leasing out islands and lagoons, not as a long-term investments, but to fund immediate spending, with the golden age of tourism slowing from most of the hoteliers' perspective. Probably Nurain has a different opinion. To fund immediate spending with, so declining and investor interest weakening, as I just showed. It used to be 10, 15 years ago, people used to queue to acquire these islands, but unfortunately it's just showing different picture now. And what bold strategies changes are needed to shift away from this cycle of short-term gains and towards a model that safeguards our natural assets while also ensuring long-term national prosperity?
Assalamu alaikum. Yes, thank you very much for this opportunity. For me today, having the opportunity to come here and seeing what Amjad has just put on the screen has actually been a relief for me. I mean, the numbers are shocking and all of us should be concerned, but I used to think, am I the only person who is looking at this? Am I the only person who is publishing these things? I researched and whatever is available publicly and publish it, and then it sinks without even making a ripple. So the numbers have been concerning for a while. We used to have, through the master plans, we used to have really set out numbers and goals and how many resorts in which areas and how many beds will come into existence. But then it all slipped away in the 2015 MMPRC scandal, and it's ongoing now. Today, resort developments are offered not as part of a strategic development plan, but as an attempt to fill up budgetary expenses. Okay, we are running short of funds, so what shall we do? How many resorts is that? How many lagoons shall we do? That sort of approach seems to be what's been driving the tourism industry for the last at least 5 to 7 years. I published an article saying it's time to take a pause in additional resort developments and study what is happening back in 2023. So I think what needs to happen is that we know the numbers. I know now today I'm very happy to know that the industry also knows the numbers and they have been studying this. What needs to be done, Amjad, with the numbers that you have and the concerns that the industry at this level have, is to actually study it without politics. I'm sure the ministry has good staff, educated, experienced staff also who's studying it. But ministry will not, a forum where concerned people can come and study this and look at why this is happening. I also looked at the numbers yesterday. The dive from April to May has been especially sharp. Is this the effect of the Trump tariffs that came up in April, or is it something else? We need to study it purely for study purpose, without without putting any political color in it. That's the only way we can figure out why first of all, is something happening? Why is it happening? What's the way out? So I would, I'm sure I'm not giving you the full answer you're looking for, but having witnessed and seeing this morning, I think the most important thing we need to do is to set up a study group that is not political, but blessed with good people who can look at it purely objectively.
I believe, thank you, Athif. Shakoor. I believe most of the audience here also agrees with the same thing, because we are in the business and we see a different picture from what politicians see. We see long term. So I think you had a very valid point. Thank you. And Shaahina. For Shaahina, it is projected that, as I have just shown on my presentation as well, it's projected that the number of resorts in the Maldives could grow from 173 to 300 in next decade, or even it could be actually earlier, because right now we have got 150 plus projects under developments or leased out for developments. Alongside hundreds of guest houses with over 3.5 million annual tourist arrivals needed to sustain this growth economically, that is to achieve at least a 61% national occupancy of 61%. From an environmental standpoint, do you believe this scale of development is truly sustainable, or are we at the risk of placing irreversible stress on our islands, the marine ecosystem, before even we understand the full-term impact? What's your thought?
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you very much. There's a tipping point for everything. And I mean, we don't know what is happening right now. Before we find out about what's going to be our tipping point with the current development, we are going to again increase to 300, to 3 million arrivals and 300 resorts and guest houses. The Maldives environment is very vulnerable, and we don't have much to offer other than that. And any tipping point where we are, challenged with, it's irreversible, basically. I mean, I think an increase of that amount in the next 10 years, we will have an irreversible tipping point. And that's very hard to say, because we are not monitoring with scientific data. We are not looking at the impact of the current reclamation and current development in certain areas. For example, we are so concentrated on central area that we are not looking at the environment in central area. I mean, if you are a diver, you will know that the visibility is now almost on the clearest day in Malay Atoll, and where the currents are, in the right directions, where we want to see the fauna and the biodiversity, the visibility is maximum 15 meters. Before, we used to have 30 to 35, 40 meter visibility because of sedimentation, because of reclamation. And we have allowed this development without a proper strategy, in the sense without a guideline where you are taking minimizing efforts. You just lease out the island, you get the deposits, money, rent, and then you don't care how they develop it. And it changes hand from the original committed person who bought the lease to other, investors who they resell the leases. And this resale does not hold the standard of a lot of times, a standard of environment that we would like to have. And there is no, the current resort development policies have not considered any update, like into more modern innovation, into more sustainability in terms of digging the island, put in lines, sewage systems. They have very old, so we need to innovate and make it a little bit more updated standards of environment sustainability, I think. Definitely the tipping point on that kind of an increase in the Maldives will be an irreversible damage, in my opinion.
Thank you, Shaahina. I just have a different question as well. As I just shown the occupancies and the bed capacity by the atolls, We are still looking at Hadal or even actually some of the other remote atolls still pretty untouched. So the question is, in terms of profitability, obviously the closer in Malé atoll area is higher. So what can we do to incentivize or motivate the developers to go to the remote atolls? Because I believe still there is an opportunity in there, if you agree.
I think, in my opinion, north to south, atolls that are less exploited for tourism is still the destination that we know the Maldives as, is still, there. But the thing is, the infrastructure is not there. We are not catering for the current arrivals or the current resorts that are up down south. I mean, I know for a fact that in Huadu Atoll, the arrival experience with our competitors is totally, in a situation. We have no connectivity. The wait is so long for the connection flight. So people who come here we talk about bed nights, coming here for 6 nights or 5 nights or 3-4 nights, do not want to spend 8 hours at the airport, going to Halif or Hadal or, down south, Addu, Formula, So we have tried Addu many times. It's not because there's no biodiversity or there's no nature. It's just as the infrastructure to give that experience to the guests. The easy travel and connectivity is not there. The sewage systems, the waste management, everything is not there to hold this capacity. Even in Malé Atoll, look at our next door islands that are having 200, we are talking about 60, 80, 100 guest houses, land for 7 million. If you look at the infrastructure on Difushi, I think it was, you said, you just showed a slide with 7 million. There's no water, there's no sewage, there's no, what are we, as a product, how are we diluting it? How are we diluting the Maldives image by doing that? Destination-wise, I think the new trend for the investors will be to go to further out, because they don't have the Maldives, the idyllic island, the less traveled. Like if you sit on a resort in Malé Atoll or Ari Atoll now, every minute there's a boat going, a seaplane going, it's just like any other, there's no quiet, no peace, no, so if you go outside, it's still that. And I think the new investors who are looking for a destination will go out to the
and also one last follow-up before I just move in. Do you think that we have missed, Maldives has been a dream destination, although there are several destinations or exotic destinations closer to some of the areas, for example, like even in China or even US and all these things. But they are taking a very long trip all the way to the Maldives. So the question is, because they were coming to the Maldives because Maldives was offering this underwater beauty and all these things. Do you think that something has been disconnected for the last 15 years? Because now we are talking about the remote atolls that has much beautiful underwaters. It's much more peaceful. Why are they hesitant? I mean, the clients, instead of going to the remote atolls, why they are choosing this area? Is there any particular, have we missed something in terms of marketing?
I mean, I think it's basically the connectivity, like I said. The wait is very long. And also the expenses, of the flights, the transportation to the destination in a further atoll. But I think we are also challenged with global changes in the environment, climate change, frequent hits of El Ninos and temperature hikes, where we are actually seeing every year now coral bleaching and things like that. So we are losing the marine fauna and flora that we are marketing so much. I mean, if you look at as a diving destination, Ari Atoll, Malé Atoll, is still one of the best diving spots. But now if you look at a diving spot in these areas, there are at least 3-4 boats in any well-known spot if you go. You are no longer that, you are not the only boat there. And we are chasing like if you go to Sampa in Ari Atoll, one whale shark, you have 200 or more guests snorkeling after, chasing it. If you look at Honeyforough Bay, very well regulated. It's managed because it is regulated. But outside the Honeyforough Bay, there's no monitoring, and I think we need a behavior change in terms of investors and also the hospitality industry as a whole to sustain it.
From marketing point of view. Thank you, Shaahina. Back to Nurain. From overdevelopment and undermarketing, I actually just am presenting these questions because you are coming from that side. I want to ask again, I've been also thinking a lot because it's quite easy to blame one thing and without knowing the story of the other side. So I want to ask you, most people are blaming low occupancy rates on overdevelopment, which is naturally but from your perspective, with your background in investment policy, do you agree with that? Or would you say the real issue lies with the lack of strategic marketing and diversification? Because Maldives has been still 99.99% of our tourism is based on leisure clients. And unfortunately, we don't have much infrastructure for the rest of other. So in terms of capacity hasn't been matched by a strong enough push in demand generation. So where did we miss that?
I feel like we could talk about this topic for quite a long time, so I'll try and keep my remarks short. There's a couple of things I want to mention. Some of the issues that we're talking about, there's a lot of data available globally on tourist behavior, on travelers' behavior. The industry is changing massively. However, for the Maldives, we have always been that dream destination, as we've said. And in those segments, we've got a growing upper class segment of travelers that will be choosing to come and have really curated experiences. At the same time, luxury travelers as well. I think where not to say that we haven't been having some fantastic efforts by the MMPRC team and collectively as an industry, but where we haven't perhaps been focusing is that the reality is we have become a tiered destination now, but that's just happened because of the ways in which we've developed. Community tourism, of which guest houses are a segment, has developed as well, but we haven't really considered how all of these either dilute our brand if we don't actually take control of the narrative. And so we now have kind of undifferentiated, it's not so much the overdevelopment, it's that we have this undifferentiated product where we have a 53-year mature branding out there that we then don't target and actually drive the demand for where we're developing. I think one other thing that I will say is that as we've developed community tourism, which is much needed to have that kind of democratized access to the gains from tourism and the benefits from tourism, what we haven't so much done is actually look at, is it community tourism that has a high return on investment, high value experiences that give that cultural product, or are we actually looking at budget travelers? Because I think all of our friends in the room from the guest house market as well, the community segment, will want that high value tourist rather than the budget tourist, because we are a small, vulnerable, that's the reality, right? We are a vulnerable nation that we can't develop and shouldn't, I believe, in my personal opinion, develop mass market tourism that just targets numbers with no regard to that kind of ROI. I'll stop there for now, but if there's anything I might add, yes.
So I believe you also agree that overdevelopment without a control and much is not really sustainable, because you also advocate about the sustainability as well, and you, as you rightly mentioned, you are focusing on the very top tier tourism developments. Yeah, thank you so much for that. Thank you. Athif, Shakoor, given your experience in economic development and governance, what specific indicators should we be monitoring to recognize when tourism growth becomes unsustainable? For example, is it declining occupancy or ROI or community retention? Are there existing policy tools such as carrying capacity models, occupancy thresholds, or destination-wide performance metrics that could provide early warning signals? Since you also was in MMA, obviously you would understand this. So are there any?
I'd like to, keep that, not forget the question, but before answering, I want to make one brief comment about the inner mall around Malé versus the outer edges. You can't beat the realities of geography. No country can beat the realities of geography. even though we are a small country, our length is almost twice the length of Sri Lanka. The outer atolls are always going to be expensive for anything, for any development. So right now we have the lease rates now adjusted to the outer islands. But I think we have to go further than that. You have to incentivize, private sector will invest when there is profit. So if you can show profit that when you invest in the outer atolls and face the challenges in running a resort in the outer atolls, that you can recompensate by even differentiated rates in tourism tax, bed tax and things like that. Those kind of thinking will be the only way you can beat the challenges of setting up a business in the outer atolls. And that's not specific just for tourism, it's for any industry. Now, about the question, Amjad, now, we cannot just look at ROIs or P&L numbers when you're looking at a tourism product in the Maldives, because it's not just a business, it's, you cannot just take the P&L, because that business comes into existence together with the reef lines, together with the environment. So whatever measures that we want to pick and select and monitor, it has to be a combination of how the business is making sense. It's gone, the ROIs has gone from 3 years to 5 years to 10 years, beyond 10 years now. But it also has to take into impact the reef line, the nature, because that's what the tourists are coming for. The new dimension that needs to be brought in is the concerns of the local community. Are all our lagoons, our picnic islands, are they disappearing? What are the employment opportunities? Are the fishermen not allowed to take bait from, as soon as a resort or a picnic island or whatever is given away, the reef lines and the shoals and the lagoons become inaccessible. So I think when you want to set up an effective and long-term measure, you have to pick up some measures that will bring all those three aspects into consideration.
Thank you, Athif. Shakoor. For Shaahina, realistically, again, as my colleagues mentioned in the past as well, looking from outside the politics spectrum, we can't change so much of it. But I just want to ask, realistically, it's unlikely that we can stop leased island developments. We are talking about 150 plus. They are part of our national growth model, whether we like it or not. But from your experience with Parley and also your work in sustainable resort operations, what are the most practical steps we can take to ensure that these developments don't come at the cost of our environment? And what must be done early on, and who needs to be involved to make that protection real and lasting? Because 10 years later, if we come back again to the same stage and we just say we discussed about it 10 years ago, but unfortunately nothing was done. So what can we do?
I think that's a very big question, and I think a lot of us coming from the resort background, we all want to make our resort the most sustainable resort. And that competition is there. And that's actually where every property is going to be differentiated with what you do for real sustainability. And I think in resort development cases, we also need to consider the investor to be made aware or have some, investor forum where ministry or environment ministry, now environment and tourism are together. So they sit investors down and actually make them invest for the future instead of investing in a property that's quickly built in any way possible and then destroying anything in the pathway. Or from design stage on, you need to make people understand that how fragile our environment is. This is one way, and then the ROI, the return on investment, should be long term than short term. So I think sustainable decisions need to be put into the investor by the ministry or environment, department or EPA, in this case, but they're all under one umbrella. So it should be easy in one way, but it also makes it difficult because who is accountable for who? So on tourism sector, it is development. On environment sector, it's sustainability. So who's gonna, be the negotiator between the two? So I think investor forums are needed, and forums like this for investors, I think should be, for future investors, should be very, very sustainable focused. And also to have a resort, there's a regulation. To have an investment regulation for tourism. I think that needs to come now. It's not just building a resort. Investing in a resort or tourism sector has to come in. It's also for guest houses, also for boats, also for anybody that is actually water sports and recreation facilities. What they're doing is to up from one island to another. They are putting feeding grounds, and they're actually changing the ecology of our fauna and flora. The stingray place, the nurse shark feeding. Every island now with guest houses is actually allocating an area where they put the food waste or the fish waste. So the stingrays are coming, so they actually take snorkeling trips. And these are photo opportunities, and these are amazing for influencers. And we are focusing more on influencer attraction than sustainability investment. And it's a quick-term benefit. So I think, for developing further out, it's I think time we made some really investment regulations for the other atolls that are still not so developed as Malé and Ari Atoll, and actually have a guided investor kind of a environment or place for them.
Thank you. I think it's something, even Destination Future, our NGO, we just started last year, and obviously we see a lot of different sides, the front, and then also the numbers we see. And of course, our environment. I myself am a diver. I can see also the changes, what is happening in the last 20 years. But I do believe that we need this. And I think it's us that we have to drive this. Again, unfortunately, from politics, it's not going to happen. So I think it's something that we can also work, and we will be in touch with you as well. Back Nurain, from sustainability, again, PR, sustainability becomes a big talking point when it comes to luxury resorts. So my question is, developers often promise sustainability, but in reality, how much of that is driven by genuine long-term vision, and how much is just about meeting investor or PR expectation? What separates real commitment from just regulatory compliance?
It's a big question. I think I want to say that now is the time to ask a really hard question, which is, do we really believe in sustainability, or is this just when you're just about to win a bid or you're putting proposals through, is that just one very pretty slide that we talk about that? If I can share a small kind of personal anecdote, I suppose, and this is to say that when we talk about investors and developers at scale, it's really important to have that local touch, and I think that's the experience that we've had, because as a family business, we want to see the longevity. This is not as a destination. We want to see, for me personally, I want to see the longevity of our country. I want to make sure that my children see this, and the reefs that I've seen, that as we've all shared, we're seeing changing real time. We want that longevity to be there, not just for the destination or the tourism industry or our profits, but just on a personal level. So I think the reality is that when we seek investors, there are certain levels of investors that are just looking for a financial ROI, but also we need to seek investors that have an imperative to make sure that there's real sustainability, which means that there's longevity, there's integration into our natural environment, so that we look at a lower footprint. A lot of the decisions that we make often is when we look at a new development. For example, we recently took on an island that's an older island and an older property. We went through through with an environmentalist and looked at the footprint of vegetation and said, we're not moving any of the existing vegetation, just as an example. Same with the reef lines, and we work a lot with the environmental consultants. So just to wrap up, I will say two things is that in the 5th Tourism Master Plan, as well as our environmental regulations, it is very strong. We talk about community feedback, we talk about environmental regulations. We do have those touch points, but how do we enforce and make sure that you're also rewarding people who are doing the right thing as well and working collectively to develop in that way?
Thank you, Nurain. Before I come to Athif, Shakoor, I was just actually wanted to go back to Shaahina. You just briefly mentioned this. I wanted tourism minister to be present here when I asked this particular question. Unfortunately, he's not here, but it's also, I think, right time. And then after this question, I would like also to ask you all, what's your opinion, just maybe by raising your hand. So, as you all know, Minister very rightly mentioned that the Tourism Ministry and Ministry of Environment has recently been combined, and it's now called the Ministry of Tourism and Environment. So the question is, with tourism and environment now under one ministry, and we are talking about sustainability in terms of the environment, so it's a very serious question. There is a potential for better alignment. So with tourism and environment now under one ministry, there is a potential for better alignment, as Minister mentioned. Okay, we all agree, but also more concern, I think, from the environmental perspective. And tourism drives the economy, yet it's also the major source of environmental pressure. So with the EPA under the same ministry, can one institution truly balance both roles? Without an independent regulator, how do we ensure accountability and long-term ecosystem protection as development grows? You just also highlighted, so just briefly you can, if you believe in it.
On a personal point of view, EPA needs to be independent, even from the Ministry of Environment, because Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Energy, right? And they are also inclined with providing the social services to the communities. And I think we are very, sure that EPA cannot be, the policeman in this case. Tourism, on the other hand, is a very political tool in sense that tourism is the driving force for our economy, and any collapse of tourism would be, catastrophic to our economy. We will never be, environment tipping point would be a catastrophe to the industry, and we can never reverse it back. So there should be an environment body, an independent body. If EPA cannot be independent, then there needs to be an independent way of, the community and the resorts should find a way to actually be in a position where we can, be ourselves doing the right thing. I think it can give strength, environment, like I said, but given the economic driver and quick results-oriented policies of Tourism Ministry to lease out whenever they're short of money, like Athif said, it's a budgetary, shortages they feel with, the things. So I feel that they need to be separated. At least EPA needs to be separated. Environment and tourism maybe can be in one, and it will strengthen each other. But the EPA needs to be independent.
So also, I just wanted to ask you all, just if you could raise your hand if you believe that, I will just give you one example before I just actually go to that question. It's like, if you look at from a resort perspective, it's the general manager also becomes the director of finance or the chief auditor. So there is no way to hold anyone accountable with this one. So who agrees that combining tourism ministry and Ministry of Environment was the right decision? Minister is not here, and we will not show your photos. Please, just tell us. We just wanted to see. What's your opinion? So, is there anyone who agrees? Okay, there's one person, because he's from development side. He has own interest thing. So who doesn't agree that it was the right decision? Okay, so majority. By the way, President, please allow us 10 to 15 minutes because we are late by 10, 15 minutes and we will quickly. Okay, I'll go back to Athif, Shakoor. This is again another very sensitive subject, tourism tax and price sensitivity. In 2010, we started our TGST with only 6%, and then now it's grown all the way to 17%. Same like the island has been leased to fund today's expenses and yesterday's mistakes. Unfortunately, the investors and the hoteliers are taking all this burden. So the question is, I don't even believe if next year that is not an increase because the budget deficit is extremely high. I don't know, it might even increase because we cannot trust politicians, unfortunately. And so the question is, are we going the right direction, Athif, Shakoor? Because if you look at even BPT, the declining occupancies, and all the resorts are fighting. 10 years ago, we used to enjoy 82% occupancy, means we had the bargaining power on our side. Unfortunately, we don't have it. So something that we sold $100 last year and 70% increase in the tax. Of course, tax is paid by the end clients, but unfortunately, it's not in our case because it's been taken from the owner's profit. What do you think we should be doing? Should we go back slightly lower and create an environment that is more favorable?
Thank you. There's no solution to figuring out a way to live beyond our means. You have to adjust to figure out how to live with our means. And that's not just at the national level, but at the household, the family, the individual level as well. Right now, not right now, for almost more close to a decade, what we have been looking at, okay, what do we want to do? How can we win votes? So what are the grand infrastructure projects that we can design and then execute, and how much will it cost? Okay, so that's how much it's going to cost. Now, how do we find the money? With our primary industry, I mean, I'm a passionate fisheries person, but the total of our primary industry income to the GDP is less than 5%. So who can give us this money? Oh, it's the tourism industry. Okay, so what can we do to the tourism industry? Oh, we'll just raise TGST, we'll raise airport development tax, and that's the attitude. It's the attitude coming from this side. Now, how do we fill the gap? Now, for anybody to say 13% or 17% or 20% is the right amount, then if you say something like that, then you are really arrogant, and you have to get the right people to study it, and then determine, given what's driving our visitors to our shows, what's driving them in, what's attracting them, how can we hold them, at which level can we increase it so that their demand, the demand side, does not flip. These things need to be studied, and then only these, and especially it needs to be announced further ahead, not 3 months, 6 months ahead. So I don't think any one person sitting in this room today can say this is the right number. It needs to be studied by the right people with the right technical input. And then only those tax numbers we can, after study, you might be able to say, oh, maybe it's too low. So I wouldn't even think of saying, that's the right number or a wrong number.
No, but where do we start this conversation, and who is going to initiate this conversation? Because the question is, again, 5 years later, when we look at PEC, if you look at, when I look at in terms of the bed capacity, I see some years that the numbers are going down from 62,000 to, I don't know if some of the resorts are just closing their operations for a certain time period, or some of them are. So the question is, are we going to just keep watching until just everything collapses, and then we just say, sorry, we should have done something? But where do we start?
We start by admitting the truth to ourselves, not just in tourism, everywhere, that we have to learn to live within our means.
Very good point. Thank you. Yeah. And this is our last question, I promise, President. Nurain, I will just ask you, profitability versus sustainability. Again, it's something that we talk. We hear a lot about ESG and impact, but at the end of the day, tourism is still a business. When you must choose between a profitability and sustainability in a project decision, which usually wins?
I'm not sure I'm going to answer your question to your satisfaction because I don't think it's a neither or. I think it is a valid question to ask because tourism is a business and we know that there are investors, there are communities, there's operators, there's people who we employ. It is a business, but at the same time, as we've heard on this panel all day today and as we will hear, what we are actually marketing is our environment, and without it we will not have an industry. So I don't think it is a trade-off that we can afford to make. If I can put our family business hat on, we've really stopped thinking about it as a trade-off with the way that we develop and with the way that we plan our feasibility studies. We really think about what is the host community that we're in. That includes the environment that we're in, and then we're asking how do we deliver longevity, long-term sustainability that is of the project as well. So not just, as a developer, we develop, flip it, and, we have the return over 8 to 10 years or whatever it is, the horizon, but really thinking about, what's the smartest way that we can develop with the least footprint, but also deliver long-term value for our community and for our environment as well. And then finally, I will touch on the fact that, we've talked a little bit, if I can use some younger people slang, we've thrown a few shady comments perhaps at some of our policymakers. But I think when we think about the future as we go forward, we cannot do that without all of us being on the same page and together, because this is really, much beyond a 5-year horizon. This is, into the future of 50 to 100 years of how we last, how our islands last, but also how we make sure that we have community that are prospering and thriving as well. So how do we jointly create regulation that works within this kind of VUCA, ambiguous, complex world in a way that is sustainable for business, for community, as well as for the nation? Thank you.
Thank you. Before I open for audience question, I just also wanted to highlight from last year in our presentation, one of presentation we mentioned that Maldives was once upon a time the example in terms of sustainability, and small destinations like Palau. The Palau's president was asked by one of these media, which role model that you would not look into, or you don't want to make the mistake of whatever. So initially everyone was saying they wanted to copy the Maldives and do the right thing, but the Palau's president mentioned he does not wanted his country to be the second Maldives. So he's controlling the developments, and even if you look at from Bhutan as well, very controlled tourism. Of course, it's beautiful and it's going, but unfortunately, after 50 years of holding that beautiful title, people are now just saying that we are no longer becoming a sustainable model, so which is very sad. And I would love actually in the future, all of us to work even more closely and to build that momentum where we can take our destination forward as well. And I would love, I would like to check if anyone has any questions to the panelists, or even if you have a counter argument or feedback. Any questions? Okay. No question. So thank you so much for your time, and I wish that we have more time, but we have also nice lunch waiting for all of us as well. Thank you so much for being in the panel. Thank you.